What's up everyone, I'm Gooshy. In this video we're going to be going over all the classes in Outriders. We'll go over the skill trees, the abilities that you have, as well as the general playstyle to make it easier for you guys to pick a class that you'd like. So with that, let's get started. As a general overview for all classes, each class specializes in a certain status effect. This can be proc with a standard melee or a running melee, which is an AoE attack. Next, all classes have abilities that are on cooldowns, which either relate to their specialized status effect or are abilities that enhance movement, or finally abilities that just give general utility. Finally, each class has a different way to heal themselves. So first we'll start off with the Trickster. The Trickster's status effect is slowing time. The Trickster is a close range class that gets healed when killing enemies in close proximity. To survive all the close range combat, the Trickster relies on building up shields and healing on kills. There are 4 powers available to the Trickster in this demo. The first is Temporal Slice, which is sort of like a sword attack which affects all nearby enemies in a 180-degree angle. This paralyzes enemies as well as does massive damage. The second power is more for utility and is called Borrowed Time. With this, you get shields equal to a percentage of your health. On activation of this power, this creates a marker which you can then teleport back to whenever you're in trouble. The really good thing about this ability is that it gives a movement ability as well as shields. The Trickster's third ability is Slow Trap. Like many of the other classes, this is their large AoE crowd control attack. And this ability basically makes a big bubble which causes all enemies within it to slow down. This seems like it lasts a decent amount of time, from like 5 to 10 seconds, and the best part is that it even slows down bullets. Finally, the last power that the Trickster has is Hunt the Prey. This ability lets you teleport directly behind a targeted enemy, gives you shields, and does an attack that will slow enemies. Again, this is one of the Trickster's better abilities because it gives you shields, provides long range movement, and slows enemies down. Moving on to the Trickster's skill tree. Each tree, the Assassin, Harbinger, and the Reaver, specializes in a certain playstyle. The Assassin is all about damage. Most of these perks give damage boosts, which are crucial to the Trickster playstyle to quickly getting in, getting shields, doing big bursts of damage, and constantly getting your health back. Some of the most important skills that I found within this tree are Disruptive Firepower, which will increase your weapon damage by 50% after using a deception skill. Outrider Executioner, which again will increase your weapon damage by 50% after using a movement skill. Scion of the Power, which again will increase your weapon damage by 50% after using a damage skill. And Unforeseen End, which increases weapon damage by 20% when attacking enemies from behind. The second tree, Harbinger, focuses on health and resistance. I think that the main benefit of this skill tree, specific to the Trickster, are the perks that give you shields or decrease the shield degeneration. It seems like shields are very important to the Trickster, so having as much shields and keeping it up as long as possible could be a viable build. Finally, the last skill tree is the Reaver. This focuses on your anomaly powers by increasing their damage. The most important perks that I found, similar to some of the assassin perks, are Counter Shield, which increases anomaly power by 50% after activating a deception skill. Combat Shield's Timeline, which increases anomaly power by 50% after activating a movement skill. And Anomalic Acceleration, which increases anomaly power after doing a damage skill. Another interesting perk is Shielded Readiness, which will change your healing when killing enemies at close range, being diverted to shield gain instead. And this can be super interesting because with some of the leeching abilities, which will give health back, along with your boosted shield, there's a possibility of regaining both shields and health at the same time. Alright, on to the next class, which is the Devastator. The Devastator is another close range class, which specializes in the status effect Bleed. So all its melee attacks will do damage over time and reduce the enemy's HP. Healing works exactly like the Trickster, where enemies slain close by will give a portion of your health back. The main difference from the Trickster is that instead of gaining shields, the Trickster gains more armor and health regen through the perks in the skill tree. Alright, onto the Devastator's powers. The first is Gravity Leap. This allows you to do a targeted power slam, which affects a certain AoE. The most important part of this attack is that it's an interrupt skill. I'm not exactly sure how important this is, but for boss fights I think that later on, during the end game, this might be a very important tool to be using. Next is Reflect Bullets. This creates a shield in front of you, which will absorb bullets, and then when prompted, shoots all the bullets back at all the enemies that shot it. This ability right here solidifies this class as the tank class. With this ability, Devastators will be able to frontline attacks, getting aggro from all the enemies so that teammates can do their thing. The Devastator's third power is Impale. This is the ability to be used to take care of all the trash mobs. quickly thinning out enemies or interrupting higher level enemies' attacks. The fourth ability, which I think is the best one in the game, probably making the Devastator a must pick within endgame, is Endless Mass. This pulls enemies all to one location for a certain amount of time, leaving them open for followed up combos. Next we'll go on to the skill trees. The top skill tree, called Vanquisher, gives slight bonuses to weapon damage, as well as some perks like increased mag size and reloading. The second skill tree, the Warden, will probably be your go-to skill tree. This includes a lot of defensive perks, which give health regen and damage resistance. This skill tree also contains probably one of the best perks in the game, Unbroken Vow. This will give you a 100% chance to ignore damage that would kill you and gain 50% health, which basically gives you a second life. The last tree is Seismic Shifter. This tree focuses on anomaly power and utility to increase your bleed damage. Alright, next class is the Pyromancer. The status effect specific to the Pyromancer is burn damage. This will do damage over time and interrupt enemies' attacks. For the Pyromancer, any enemies marked by things like burn damage who also get killed will restore your health. This means that Pyromancers aren't restricted to a specific range combat. Most of the Pyromancer's abilities burn enemies, so the first one that they have is Thermal Bomb. This will do damage to enemies and set them on fire, and if you kill them, they explode to do damage to enemies nearby. The next possible power is Ash Blast. This is the Pyromancer's crowd control ability, which turns enemies into ash and immobilizes them for a couple seconds. The next ability is Heat Wave. This is a medium range attack that sends a wave out in a straight line, burning enemies and doing damage along the way. Finally, the last power is Overheat. This by itself doesn't do that much damage, but is made to combo with other abilities, as it does more damage if enemies are already inflicted by a status effect. Moving on to the skill tree, the first skill tree that the Pyromancer has is Ashbreaker. Again, this skill tree gives a lot of boosts to weapon damage. It also gives other bonuses like the skills Hot Situation, which will increase your anomaly power by 45%, Leeching Force, which will double your weapon leeching for 4 seconds after activating Immobilize, and Ashes to Ashes, which will also add the Vulnerable status effect to all enemies affected by Ash. The second skill tree is Firestorm. This tree gives a little bit of bonuses to everything, such as cooldown reduction, health increase, skill leech, and increased armor. The last tree is Tempest. This will probably be your go-to skill tree as it gives bonus damages to both weapon and anomaly powers. Finally, the last class you can choose is the Technomancer. The status effect that the Technomancer specializes in is Freeze, and in my opinion is one of the best status effects that you can be using. The Technomancer's healing ability is also one of the best in the game. A portion of the damage dealt to enemies you get back in health. Unlike all the other classes, which require a kill to get health back, the Technomancer has more of a sustained healing and less burst healing. On to the Technomancer's abilities. The first is Tool of Destruction. This skill lets you summon a rocket launcher or a machine gun to freely switch between and use. This provides multiple uses, as a machine gun can be used to clean up low level mobs, and the rocket launcher can be used against bosses to stun them. The next power that the Technomancer has is Fixing Wave. This is the only healing ability in the game which will heal you, your constructs, and your allies regardless of distance. The next power that they have is the Pain Launcher. This lets you summon a construct of a missile launcher. It will automatically fire upon enemies and interrupt enemies' attacks. The next power that they have is another construct called Blighted Turret. This does damage to enemies and inflicts a new status effect, Toxic. Toxic does damage over time and can distract enemies. Finally, another ability that the Technomancer could use, which is probably a must-have, is Cold Snap. This is their AoE crowd control ability, which will freeze enemies all within a certain radius, which will last around 4 to 5 seconds. Alright, on to the skill trees. If you're running a toxic build, this is the skill tree that you'll be using, as it gives a lot of bonuses to weapon damage and the toxic status effect. The next skill tree is Tech Shaman. If you're focusing on freeze more, this is the skill tree that you'll be using, as it gives more bonuses to freeze duration and debuffing enemies while they're frozen. Finally, the last skill tree is Demolisher. Like other classes, this gives bonuses to anomaly power damage, and unique to the Technomancer, also gives bonuses to toxic. So that's all the class abilities and skills currently available to us in the game. I'm super excited to see what the end game looks like, because it does seem like all classes are viable. The Trickster has the most potential damage output, the Devastator has the best tanking ability and survivability, the Pyromancer has the most potential damage over time, and the Technomancer has one of the best status effects, Freeze, and really good healing abilities. So we'll see how builds eventually evolve. There might be different builds used for mobbing versus bossing. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Hope to catch you in the next one, and GG.